This week on One Crazy Story, TV producer Steve Lamar joins us to talk about the week he spent with Sam Kinison.
Sam had gotten a spot on the Rodney Dangerfield special, and Tom just happened to see it, and he called me in, the next day, after he saw it, and said, "Hey, I saw your guy Sam." He goes, "I want to meet him. We want to see him. Set it up," and that's how that got started.
Now, for those of you who probably may not know who Sam Kinison is, a legendary stand-up comedian, if you guys want to check him out, make sure you go to YouTube and just type in Sam Kinison's First Letterman Set and watch that video. That'll give you the perfect example of what Sam Kinison was like. Just a powerhouse on stage, so funny, and unfortunately he's no longer with us, but Steve's story was just too good not to share. So Steve wrote a book about it and his whole experience working with Sam when he was working on the show Washington. It was a Showtime show. It's one of those right place at the right time things, because I find that anyone who works in show business, if you ask them how they got to where they ended up, there's really just no way you could go A, B, C. It's just kind of like, well, I did this and it ended up here and then kept going. And yeah, next thing you know, I'm writing a book about it. That's pretty much what it was. I mean, it's just right place at the right time. Just a great story, and you guys are going to love it. It's a lot of fun, and we'll just cut to the chase. We'll just get to the episode right now. But first, if you guys are enjoying the show, please do me a favor. Go on over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, maybe a nice comment. That'd be fantastic. Also, you can find it everywhere now. iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, Spotify. Everywhere you can find a podcast, you can find this show. So tell your friends about it, please. Share it on Facebook. Do it all, just tell everybody about it. It wouldn't hurt. I would love you forever. Also, if you want to contact me directly, you can always email me at onecrazystory@gmail.com. Let me know if you got a great story that you'd love to tell on the show, or if you think you know somebody that should be on the show, let me know. I'd love to talk to you. So go ahead and send me an email. Follow me on Twitter at onecrazystory, facebook.com/onecrazystory, all of that. Keep in touch, and most importantly, enjoy this week's episode with TV producer and author Steve Lamar. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Steve. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
Now, your new book, and I think this is your first book, correct?
First and probably last.
First and last, yeah. The book is called Sam and Me, The Week I Spent a Year with Sam Kinison. I was very intrigued when I read the title, and I love the way... I love the way you set it up with your childhood and your growing up and how you got to the point of meeting Sam. Obviously, you don't just meet Sam out of the blue. So how do you even get to the point of meeting Sam Kinison? Like, where does it all start for Steve Lamar?
Well, it all started from humble beginnings, I would say. And, I grew up in a really small town in Texas, and my dad died when I was really young, and didn't leave us with much. And my mom then had a stroke, a few years after that, and wasn't able to work. And so we were just, we were poor. And I was my brothers and my sister and I, we kind of, grew up in the projects, and my escape was television. I loved shows in the 70s, and I also loved the TV Guide. That's what was kind of like a Bible for me, being able to read about the shows and behind the scenes, and that really intrigued me, that there was a whole business side behind the scenes that was something that I could maybe be a part of. So that was kind of how it started for me. Yeah. So a young Steve Lamar growing up in the projects in Texas, which is also where Sam is from, and you discover that there's this whole world behind the TV shows you're watching. There's the production aspect and everything. Did you ever think you want to be in front of the camera too? No, not really. I of course, when you're a kid, I'd watch shows like Chips and think, oh man, it'd be so cool to be one of those guys and riding around on a motorcycle all day and getting a big fat check for doing it. That sounded cool, but reality kind of set in. I wasn't really that guy that wanted to be in front of people and getting attention that way, So when I read things about directors and producers, and then finally, stuntmen, that really got me going. So when I found out that there were stuntmen that do the stunts for people, it wasn't the actors that were doing the doing the fights and the car wrecks and the high falls and things like that. That really got my attention. And
how old were you when you discovered that stuntmen were a thing?
I'm guessing probably about 11 or 12, somewhere in there.
Oh man.
Yeah. So my friends and I, we would set up mock fights and we were always jumping ramps with our bikes and doing really, really stupid stuff that luckily we never, we made it through it alive.
No major injuries as a young Steve?
Not from that. I had a couple, but they were never really from doing that kind of stuff. It just happened accidentally. But yeah, that's really what piqued my interest. And when I first moved to Los Angeles, that was really kind of where my head was at, that I wanted to be a stuntman. So
your dream when you moved to LA was to be a stuntman, not necessarily any other dream at the time.
No, that was it. I'd always, as a kid, because I grew up, my mom, before this was kind of before my dad died, before my mom got sick, she had a little cafe, and in the cafe there was a jukebox. And so I wasn't shy. I mean, I would stand up, beside the jukebox, and people would come in and give me a quarter to play a song and sing along with it. And I did that. And so I loved music too, but the TV thing and the stuntman thing is really kind of where I wanted to be.
Whenever I read showbiz stories like this, and I always compare it to my current, wherever I'm at in my career, like right now I'm a stand-up comedian, a podcaster, I'm trying a whole bunch of things. And like my original dream, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. I know with stand-up comedy, you start doing open mics and you have an outlet, a place for new people to start. But with stuntmen, it's not like you can just show up and practice falling off a building, right? Like, I mean, in order to break into that industry in LA, at least at the time, do you go to like a school, or how do you meet other stuntmen? Yeah.
Well, first of all, when you just said when you hear showbiz stories like that, it still amazes me that you say, I have a showbiz story? Really?
Yeah.
It just sounds weird.
That's still part of the business. And you know what I mean? Like in this whole book, all I kept thinking, because I am a fan of Sam Kinison, and I'm in my 20s, so obviously I didn't discover Sam until after he had passed, after his whole career had come and gone. Sure. So I'm reliving this as a young comedian now in 2017, 18, and I have to go back and imagine what it was like. But you were actually there in the 70s, in the 80s, working in LA. Yeah. Actually, I moved there in 1980. But when you asked about kind of how did I go about trying to get into the stunt world? Well, first of all, I was really young and stupid, so I wasn't, I was just kind of gung ho, so I would do whatever. But I watched a lot of movies, and I always wrote down the stunt coordinator's name and kept a little notebook. So if I ever ran into any of those guys, I would be able to kind of, if I didn't remember, I could kind of thumb through and know what movies they did and then talk to them about it if I met them. So I did that, and there was a particular place back in the day where stuntmen used to hang out, the Palomino Club in North Hollywood. And I would go there, man, sure enough, because that was from a movie, Hooper, with Burt Reynolds. And it was a real place. And so I went there and I met a lot of stuntmen. And then I found out about this guy named Hubie Kearns, who was Batman's stuntman from the original series. Oh, wow.
Adam West. And he had a small it was, based pretty much out of his house. And he had a warehouse too, a stunt school. And he took in, all of us crazy kids and would kind of teach us, how to do fights and how to do different things.
What is that class like?
For me, when I look back on it now, I was like, what was I thinking? Because all of the other people in there were so much more athletic and had special skills with either, dirt bike riding or martial arts or gymnastics. And I had none of that other than just, hey, I want to be a stuntman.
Yeah.
So looking back on it now, I was, kind of young and naive, but it was still a fun experience.
I think in order to break into being a stuntman in Hollywood, you have to kind of be fearless and just be able to do it. Because I mean, regardless, you're jumping off of a building, whether or not you've done it before.
Right.
So
right.
I think regardless, you're going to have to. And I can't imagine many adults are going after that dream. I feel like you have to be young.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder what it's like out there now for people that want to do that, how it comes about. But one thing too, I know then and probably now too, it's definitely a family business. There were families that, the dad was a stuntman, the son, and then the grandson, and, nephews and uncles. It's, where the whole family was kind of in on it.
That's interesting.
There were definitely a couple of those.
When you take this class, do you just sign up? Was it a paid class or was it just?
Yeah, no, it was a paid class. I don't remember how much it was. But yeah, you paid a weekly fee and
you got to learn from a professional.
From a professional, and he had and there were people of different degrees of skill that were there. And I remember Hubie's son, I think his name was Hubie Jr. He was also part of the class. And, but he had already done things. He'd been in movies and television shows and done things. And I think he's still doing stunts today.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So after you take the class, did you end up, after taking a class and learning from somebody like him, do you still feel as excited about being a stuntman? Did it give you kind of was it an eye-opening experience?
It was, well, kind of what I'll tell you, what happened for me, kind of what steered me in a different direction where I said, well, maybe this isn't for me, is I was practicing high falls in Hubie's backyard, and we had this platform set up, and it was probably 20 or 30 feet up. And I'd done several, and I did a fall into a bag, and I almost missed the bag.
Oh man.
And it scared everybody there, including Hubie, including me. And I kind of realized, like, I don't know. I thought I did that right. I don't know what I did wrong.
Right.
Maybe this isn't. Maybe I don't have the skill set for this, after all. So
yeah, you only get one chance to really mess up in the stunt world.
yeah, and so that's kind of what got me thinking I needed to figure something else out.
How old were you at the time you kind of decided to let the stuntman dream go?
Yeah, God, that was not long after. So that was I must have been probably around, my guess was around 18.
Yeah,
something like that.
An 18-year-old living in LA, first time moving away from home.
Oh yeah, first time.
And it's LA. It's not, you didn't just move to like Tulsa, Oklahoma. You're in LA. No. That's a big city for a young person to just kind of, but I feel like a lot of stories start that way where they're just like, I'm just going to go, I got this dream, and you always start one place and end up somewhere else, it seems like, or at least anyone in LA I know. They're like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be a stuntman, and then they don't end up becoming a stuntman, but they usually end up in a good place. And where did you go from the stunt dream?
Well, from there, and even at the time I was working construction and doing different things like that. And what happened when we actually got me into the business, there was one of my roommate's friends was a production assistant on a show called Buffalo Bill, which is a Dabney Coleman show. And which is a great show, by the way, if you've ever, I don't even know if it's available anywhere, but it was really way ahead of its time. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they were on hiatus and they were moving some stuff out of their offices, and he asked me if I wanted to come help him out and move some furniture out of the office into storage. And I was like, yeah, okay, got nothing else going on. So I went and I did that, and the writer, producer, a couple of those guys were still there in the offices working, and I met them when I went in to help, and we kind of all hit it off, and I ended up working. They asked me to come back another day. I came back, and then that turned into a week, and then that turned into a month, and I ended up working with those guys for years.
Wow. And all from just helping out a buddy.
Yeah, totally fell into it and just lucked out, the right place at the right time.
Yeah, but you knew you wanted to be in that industry, and you fell right into it. Isn't that funny how that works out?
Amazing.
So, what kind of work were you doing after the move and everything, and they basically hire you?
Well, yeah, kind of my first job with them, where other than just kind of being a gopher, I was just kind of doing whatever they needed, is the director writer. His name was Tom Patchett, and he'd gotten a show. It was kind of a comedy special, hybrid, weird kind of a show. I don't even remember the name of it, but he lived in Santa Monica. The studio was in Hollywood, so he needed somebody to drive him back and forth. Drive him to the studio in the morning, then bring him home in the afternoon. And so, instead of sitting in traffic, he could work on a script.
Sure.
And so that was my first job. And he and I just kind of hit it off, and we became friends. And the next show that he had, he made sure that I was on it. And then that went on and on and on. And we also just became really, close friends, and he's, kind of like part of the family.
So at this point, you're working in LA. You finally have established some sort of a career. You're definitely on the way to at the time you didn't know, but you're on your way to what you'd be doing the rest of your life. And you got this job on a Showtime series. Is that correct? Yeah, it was a Showtime series. It was a sitcom, and it was called Washington, and it was based on a comic strip. And that was my first series that I worked on, and that gave, because it was a sitcom, and Tom Patchett also, I should go back a little bit. He, was from the comedy world. He was a comedy writer. He'd worked on a lot of big television shows, Bob Newhart, Carol Burnett. He was a writer on those shows, and he, so I'd gotten into kind of the comedy world through him. And, and I really enjoyed that. These guys were all about making each other laugh, and I'm a little biased, but I feel like comedy is probably the best genre to work in, because it's just, you're working with comics, funny people, all the writers are, you're in that writer's room. I can't even imagine how much you guys laugh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it definitely can be a good time, and high stress and all that too. But yeah, it was just fun. We had a lot of fun doing those shows back then. And, but because of what the show was, and because of the kind of comedy that I knew that Tom liked, when I stumbled upon Sam at the Comedy Store, first I wasn't, Sam was just really, it was even too much for me. There are a lot of people. There are people now, friends of mine, that don't know who Sam is. I mean, I think that everybody just knows Sam. And every now and then someone that, that has my book, or they're going to get my book, they say, I don't really know who Sam is. And I said, well, before you read the book, just go to YouTube and search for Sam Kinison's first David Letterman appearance. You know what's funny is, even before you and I started emailing, I watch that set probably once a year, because I think it's just so funny. Great. Yeah, if you don't know Sam, that's all you got to see. Exactly. Right? That tells you all you need to know about Sam Kinison if you've never seen him before. It sums up everything he's like on stage. He's just so out there and so loud and so funny. Like, there's no way you can't laugh, Right. But it can definitely be a little intimidating if you're not quite ready for it. Right. And the first time you saw him, it was a little intimidating, right? Because at the time, now what year was the first show you saw Sam at? 1985. At the Comedy Store. Now this is like at the Comedy Store. This is like the era to hang out at the Comedy Store. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was some big stuff going on. You're seeing everybody. Yeah, a lot of people that hadn't made it yet. Dice Clay. Mm-hmm. Damon Wayans. Also, I remember seeing at that time. Those are just guys getting up there doing their thing back, then. So when you went to the Comedy Store that night, did you just go to have a good time, just to go see a show, or were you kind of? Yeah, I kind of already, I hung out there a bit already, and, it's just a fun place to go. And, I'm like, 21 or 22 at the time. So, and so we were always out doing something, getting into some kind of trouble, sure, and trying to have fun somewhere. And Comedy Store was just a great place to be. The first time I'd gone with my friend Ike Eisenman, and Ike was a child actor, and so he was in his big claim to fame was Escape to Witch Mountain. Was Oh, wow.
He was the kid in those movies.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and he was also in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. He's the cadet that gets killed and sort of toward the beginning of the movie.
No way.
Puts his big bloody handprint on Captain Kirk.
Man,
so
that's awesome.
Anyway, so we went together, and he had seen Sam before, and he had told me a little bit about him. He was excited to see him. I was like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came on, it was a little too much for me. and I just, and then when I saw him, we saw him outside after the show, and it was just Sam. It was just like,
right.
He wasn't on. He wasn't being loud and crazy
he's off the clock. He was
off the, but it's almost like, I one of the jobs I had after I left LA, I moved to Nashville, and because I also do music, and I came out here, and the first couple of 3 years I was here, I worked in a bar, and where I had a trio, and we worked in this big bar at the Opryland Hotel.
Oh, nice.
And there were times when the crowd was thinning out, and the bartenders would kind of give us the look. It's like, play some really slow, bad songs and drive everybody out of here so we can go home. And I felt like that's kind of what Sam was doing that first night that I saw him, because he was just unloading on everybody. And it was just really, really harsh and really brutal.
Oh my God.
And I think then looking back, I said, I wonder if he was okay. It's, they always put him on late anyway, because if there were people left, he would drive them out, most of them.
Yeah, he was kind of there to clear out the room at the end of the night.
Pretty much. That's what he did, whether he intended to or not. But until people caught on, to what he was doing.
So you guys meet Sam outside of the club after. How was he? Pretty nice to you guys? Pretty good dude?
He was great. He was just like, really, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? What's going on? Yeah, and he recognized Ike, because Ike was very recognizable.
Yeah.
And that's how we started talking. And then then it kind of clicked to me. Oh, it's. I hate to say it was an act, but it was, really, it's Sam.
He's different off stage, and there's nothing to be scared of, that sort of thing.
No.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a jerk or a creep, and I really liked him. And then I got it. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I literally went back the next night and laughed my butt off, and just really, really, really enjoyed it, and kept going back. And then I was like, God, Tom Patchett has got to come and see this guy.
Yeah.
I know he's going to love him. So then I kept bugging Tom to come see him, which didn't happen right away. It took a while. Unfortunately, in bugging Tom so much to try and get him to come see Sam, Tom got a little snippy with me, because I was just bugging him too much.
He's like, gosh, Steve, I don't need.
He finally kind of snapped at me, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I should back off. But then what happened right about that time, and this was, I don't know, I guess a couple of months after I first first met Sam. Sam had gotten a spot on the Rodney Dangerfield special, and it was an HBO special for young comedians. And Tom just happened to see it, and he called me in, the next day, after he saw it, and said, hey, I saw your guy Sam. He goes, I want to meet him. We want to see him. Set it up. And that's how that got started.
That's crazy how you're like, guys, you got to check him out. He's so funny. And they're like, no, I don't care. I don't want to go to the show. And then they catch him on Rodney Dangerfield's young comedian special, and they're like, this guy is hilarious. We got to go see him live. That's the guy that Steve was talking about.
That's it. So, it was really kind of, in a way, it was kind of good for me that it worked that way.
Absolutely. It kind of validates your taste in entertainment, but also it's just a version of networking in a way. You're just like, guys, I think this guy's hilarious. You got to check him out, and it helps you, it helps Sam, it helps everybody.
Exactly. But then the nice thing is they came and they had a great time, and they loved it. And then Tom literally wrote an episode just for Sam.
Wow.
He wrote it specifically for Sam.
After one set.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yep.
So he liked him that much off the bat. He was like, this is it.
Yeah, they all the guys, all the guys,
great.
The executive producer came, the two executive producers, the star of the show, Tom Calloway, and they're all, and Tom Patchett was also there. And also what scared me is all their wives came too. And I was like, oh, geez, this may not go over so well with them.
Yeah,
but
they might not enjoy themselves.
And,
oh, man.
Yeah.
What a relief that night went well.
Yeah, totally.
So did you guys hang out with Sam after that show? Was Sam able to meet the producers and everybody?
Basically, he came back after Sam. I was able to get Sam an earlier time slot that night because I couldn't get these big shots to be there at 1:00 in the morning. So luckily they was able to get Sam on earlier. And then after the set, he came out and met everybody, and he was gracious and awesome.
What was the process for you, not being a comedian or really affiliated with the Comedy Store in any way? How did you talk to the Comedy Store about changing the lineup? Because that sounds like a very hard task for somebody. I mean, I guess if you have the excuse of Showtime, and these people are coming to see a specific comedian, can we do something about that? Did that make it easier?
Right. Well, it did make it. I just had to convince them that I wasn't full of crap. That it was for real.
Everybody in LA knows a producer.
Yeah, exactly. So, but was able to do that, and then they made the slot earlier for him, and it which was great because I would have never gotten them there late.
Mm-hmm. How close were you with Sam in between the first night you saw him and when you got all of your coworkers to come see him? Were you guys buddies? Did you guys hang out and did he know that these people were coming to see him?
Oh yeah. Because I told him, hey, and I told him about the show that I was working on, told him about Tom, and that I knew Tom would like him if I could just get him in there to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was all a process, and it took a little while. We didn't go hang out. I wouldn't say that we were pals and buddies, but, I saw him back then, 2 or 3 times a week before, because I was at the Comedy Store a lot back then,
mm-hmm.
just hanging out and seeing him. And, while I was trying to get this thing together for them to come out and see him.
That's so cool. That's so cool that all worked out. And I'm sure Sam was so excited when he found out that they were writing his own episode.
Oh, he flipped out. It was awesome. It was, it's like the truth is this was a Showtime sitcom. So that was really unusual back then. That was before there was so much programming,
uh-huh.
On the cable, a couple of cable shows. So it was a different thing. It's like, this isn't NBC or CBS or ABC, it's Showtime.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a different thing, but it was still a big deal because of the credits that the director and the writers and people had on the show. They were all legitimate. It was a big deal for him for sure, especially his first acting gig.
Yeah, because you essentially, in a way, you got him his first acting gig.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's my claim to fame now. So, I'm very proud to be able to say that. Yeah, I got him his first acting gig.
That is huge. That is a big deal. So after it's all decided, we're gonna have Sam on the show. We're gonna do it. Where do you go from there? Does it become your job, or do you just what was your role in the production aspect of everything yet to come?
Well, my role, I was just then I think I was just a production assistant at the time. So I was really on the low rung of the totem pole. I might have been a production supervisor at that time by then, but either way, my job was just to kind of keep the machine running there, but I would not have had much to do with it at all, other than the fact that the first day of rehearsal, Sam's a no-show. He doesn't show up, so we're there for the table read and there's no Sam. And of course, all eyes are on me because I brought him in.
Right. This is, according to them, this is your guy. What?
He's my guy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they said. Steve, where's your guy? I was like, oh.
Yeah. And it's easy for me to assume now that he had probably just had a late night.
Yeah, it's to say the least. And yeah, but he was, and this was before cell phones.
Oh, man.
And it's an email and all that. So, if you didn't pick up the phone, there's nothing else to do other than to trek over to his house.
I
and
can't
find
imagine
out what's going on.
how stressful that had to have been. It's you know, I'm this young. I grew up with cell phones in a way. You know, this has always been a thing. Like,
Sure.
why didn't you just call them? You know, or text them or email. You know, Facebook them, do something. And you're just nope. I got to drive across LA to find out where Sam is. You know.
No. If you're really lucky, at that time you had a beeper.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You were doing well if you had a beeper
extent.
back in the day. Were you able to find Sam?
Well, he didn't answer his phone after repeated calls, so I was sent to go look for him, and I knew where he lived, so I went to his place, and I went to his apartment, and I knocked on the door, no, nothing. Pound on the door. Finally, this young lady opens the door, and but doesn't want to let me in. And she just said, "Sam's sick. He's really sick, but he'll make it tomorrow. I promise he'll be there tomorrow." And I was, I'm frantic at this point because I think I'm going to lose my job. You know?
Your job's on the line.
I'm just, because if he doesn't show up, then what's going to happen? We're going to blow a whole episode. And that's not good.
No, you're costing other people's jobs and more money involved at that. You know, it just piles on, and you're like, this is all on you, man.
Well, so I sort of gently pushed my way in to get inside to see what was going on, and Sam was literally laying on the living room floor.
Oh boy,
passed out, completely naked.
Oh
just
man,
out. Big Sam right there in the middle of the floor.
Did you know at the time that he was into, I guess, partying as much as he was?
I didn't know how much.
Yeah.
Then I knew he did. I knew he was. He was definitely on the wild side, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
How to what extent.
Yeah. So this becomes it becomes a concern for you and your coworkers at this point.
I thought it was over. I thought that there was no way he's if this is his condition now, there's no way he's going to make it tomorrow. So when I went back to the office and to the production office, I told Tom and the executive producer that I hate to say this, but I think we need to recast. He's blotto.
Right.
I couldn't shake him. He was, and I said, well, surprisingly, Tom said, let's give him one more day. If he doesn't show up tomorrow, then we'll recast.
Wow. Lucky.
That's cutting it pretty close, but we'll see.
Now, how long does it take to put to complete a production of a whole episode of the show?
That show, it was 5 days. It was basically it was Monday through Friday. So our first day was a table read and then rehearsal. And the second day was more rehearsal and which leads up to Thursday and Friday for us were our block and tape days.
Okay.
So it would have been tough recasting him too because it was specific. It was written for Sam.
Yeah. Are you going to find another
for his personality?
You're not going to find another comedian that can just scream a line. You know what I mean?
It just wouldn't have worked.
No.
No,
that would have really been a huge problem.
But thankfully, day 2 rolls around and he shows up bright and early and looks great and happy, knew all his lines and was ready to go.
What a pro.
So I was like, oh, like that was quite a relief.
Like I have one extra drink the next day. I'm thrown off. It takes me 3 hours to get going and he's just like, he's passed out to the point of where you can't even wake him up. And he shows up the next day, knows his lines, and just nails it.
Well, yeah, and the night before, I was so upset with the whole situation. I didn't even go back. I'd called him and left him a message and said, you've got one more chance. You got to be there tomorrow. And that's it. He never called me. I never heard from him. I didn't go to the Comedy Store that night. And I had very little hope that he would actually show up, but he did.
Yeah, so he didn't even give you a heads up. Don't worry, I'll be there. Now, no reassuring. You just had to bite your nail.
Nothing.
Did you get any sleep that night?
Yep. Not a lot. Not a lot.
Oh man, well, I'm so glad that he showed up and it worked out. It seems like it went well. Everybody was happy.
Yeah, it did. It did. Once he got on set, everybody was happy. It was laughs. he did what he needed to do. He did his job, and the lines were funny. It was a good episode. It was funny, and Sam was funny because he was doing his thing.
So he shows up the second day, and everything's going well, and then day 3 comes along. But throughout the week, I mean, do you keep going to the Comedy Store? Do you have to kind of inadvertently become his babysitter without him knowing, or just to kind of make sure?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened after the first day. I mean, after the second day when he showed up, Tom, at lunchtime, Tom was like, "Hey, everything's going great. Sam's, it's really funny. Just, you need to make sure he's your boy. You make sure he's here the rest of the week, and we finish this episode." Oh, okay. All right. That's my job. So that became my job for the rest of the week, was spending, and that's how I got to spend so much time with him that week, because I was with him every night at the Comedy Store.
Oh man.
Kind of, even though he went on late, I had to make sure, okay, well, he's going to want to hang out for a little while. Then we got to get out of here so he can get home and get some sleep and be on set tomorrow at 9 or 10 or whatever time.
What a week.
Call time was.
What a week you had.
Oh, it was awesome.
Man.
It at the time, it was hectic and crazy, and it really did feel like a year, especially, by the time we got to the end of it. But it was, looking back on it now, it was just, I'm so glad I had that experience and got to spend that time with him.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many people have a similar Sam Kinison experience as you, but this is quite a week you had.
Well, it's like one of the things I had to tell a few people was, this is not the Sam Kinison story. It's not Sam Kinison's life story. It's the story of my week with him.
Yes.
And, and it was a really fun week. And I think, I think it was pretty entertaining. And a lot of people have told me how much they felt like they kind of got to know him in a little different way from reading this. So that makes me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what even made you decide to write a book? Because you sat on this experience for almost, it was like 30 years? Or
25.
25 years?
Well, actually a little longer than that. But because he died in 92.
Mm-hmm.
So, which, he just had that, 25-year anniversary of his death, which kind of snuck up on me. Basically, the reason I wrote the book was I've been in the business for kind of a long time now. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done a little bit of acting, done a little bit of producing, done a little bit of work as a singer and as a songwriter, and I've experienced painful rejection in all of those things. But I've never experienced any painful rejection in being an author, so I thought I'd give that a shot and see how that works. And it's believe me, it's just as, the rejection is just as awful being an author as it is any of those things. But I told this story so many times. People find out that I knew Sam, so people would ask me about her. Hey, tell that story. Tell so and so that your Sam Kinison story. And everybody always loved it, and people, especially in the comedy world, as you know, being a comedian, even a lot of the younger comedians, they just revere Sam. I mean, he's an icon.
Yeah, he's legendary.
So, yeah, and so my wife had kept kind of pestering me. She said, you need to write that down. You need to write that story and just get it on paper. And what happened for me was I recently, or last year, I read Norm Macdonald's book. I don't know if you've...
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah. Based on a true story, it's great. When I read Norm's book and kind of how he did it, it kind of, a light bulb went off for me. I was like, oh, okay, I think I know how to do this now. I think I know how to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where it came from. And my wife, again, also, when I first started thinking about writing, I was really just going to write about Sam. And I said, this is going to be a really short book. It's just about this week, from the time I met him till the time the episode ended. And she goes, well, you got to also write a little bit about yourself to tell how you got from your beginning to how did you get from nowhere in Texas to Hollywood to helping Sam get his first acting gig. And so that that's how that part came about.
I'm glad you told your story too, because I think your story is also just, I think it leads up to how you met Sam in a great way.
Well, I'm really, honestly, I'm glad to hear that, because, especially from somebody that doesn't know me, it's like, it's one thing for family and friends to read it and go, oh, it's so cool about, but it's like, well, but what about people that don't know me? How is that?
Right.
I just hope that it worked. And I'm glad to hear that from you, that you enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, man, I really did. I appreciate you reaching out to me about coming on the show, because I think I loved the book. Also, now where is it available? I'm sure you can get it on Amazon and all of that stuff.
It's basically, that's the only place you can get it, is Amazon. It's on, if you go to Amazon and if you just search Sam Kinison book,
okay,
it will pop right up. Or you put in, the title of the book, or even if you just search my name, Steve Lamar, it comes right up.
I definitely want people to hear that, because anybody who loves Sam should definitely read this book. Or anybody who's at all curious should definitely read this, because it's pretty funny. And, and also, like I said, it's a little bit of showbiz in there, because it's all behind the scenes stuff, and the fact that it was his first acting gig is a big deal, because who knows, like, what if you'd never met Sam and you never made this happen, whether or not it was intentional or just luck of the draw, you're just like, I was just partying at the Comedy Store and it worked out. But what if it never happened?
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't have gotten Sam to the next thing, to the next, you know what I mean? And on and on.
Well, I have to say, I know he would have, but I know what you mean. For me, I was just in a really great place to be a small part of it, just a little cog in the wheel.
That's so cool.
I just feel like I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's how most things go. You can't plan it, man.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm glad you enjoyed the book. I do think, there's funny sprinkled throughout the book, and the stuff about me, and then the stuff about Sam. So I think people will get a laugh or two or a smile or two along the way.
I definitely laughed out loud a couple times.
Great.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate you coming on to talk about the book. And what's next? Are you doing anything? Anything else you want to share? Anything? And can people find you online? Are you into that, or are you just more leave me alone, buy the book?
No, I've actually I had a Twitter account for a long time that I never used, and now I said, well, maybe I should start using that now for Sam, and to try and get that out there. Really, my big focus right now is just trying to get the word out, and letting people know that the book is available. So I'm sending it out, done some press releases, and doing sending a lot of promo books out into people like you. And so for you doing this and spending a little time and talking to me is it's just great, and it's really just what I need. So I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you being on the show. And if you ever want to come back, please let me know.
Well, I do have a couple of other stories up my sleeve, so we may have to talk about that.
I think you're going to become a regular guest here.
That would be too cool.
All right. Thanks so much, Steve.
You got it. Thank you.